Greetings. It's a pleasure to greet everyone here online. Many of us know Yujin already, so I don't know that an introduction is needed, and yet it seems like words of welcome are always fitting. Yujin Pak is a spiritual pioneer who has spent the vast majority of his adult life encouraging abundant spiritual expression through speaking the word, teaching, writing, and developing curriculum. He has provided a steady beacon of light through the vicissitudes of the past 3 decades. He offered essential spiritual leadership at Sunrise Ranch during the 90s and most of the 2000s until 2007, when he and Marcia moved to Korea. There, he has poured out a blessing through ministry and the Art of Living School for the last 17 years. And before Yujin speaks, I feel compelled to offer a devotion. O Lord of love, how deeply we give thanks in this hour to allow the blending of our living with Thee, with the substance of one another, that the word may be focused, cleanly, sharply, and as You would have it. For this is Thy temple, and it is our deepest longing that You might be free to speak Your word in ways that it hasn't been spoken for, well, since the motherland. We would open our hearts and avail ourselves to Thee to move with Your sacred will in these precious times of union. All to Thy glory. Amen. Welcome, Yujin.
Thank you, Robert. What a privilege and honor it is to gather together in holiness as in this hour, together with such passionate, dedicated servants of the Lord. So wonderful to be with you, friends. So wonderful. It's a special occasion, the 92nd anniversary of the birth of Emissaries of Divine Light, the third sacred school. Here in Korea, it's the morning of September 16. In America, the evening of the 15th. It so happens, by the way, that tomorrow here in Korea is the Korean Thanksgiving Day. I give thanks, especially for each and all of you. I know how much living service and dedication has gone into your lives. As I reflect upon entering this time together, I think about the title and meaning of the 3 services of Martin, most recently posted in the Great Cosmic Story. The priesthood after the order of Melchizedek, trembling to obey, and moment of truth. Don't the titles themselves say so much? In these titles are perhaps contained some of the deepest truth of the Third Sacred School. Yolanda and Martin spoke of the priesthood after the order of Melchizedek as a transcendent governmental and leadership order present on earth from the beginning of creation of man, and that it has guided humanity through all of its history, through its good times, and presumably there were some extraordinary times, through its bad times, and we have seen both in our lifetimes and in reviewing the history of man, some really bad times, and also climax times. Just a word about the priesthood after the order of Melchizedek, which we, all of us, have some appreciation for, but I want to touch on a very particular, specific relatedness to us. You could say, in essence, that the priesthood of Melchizedek, I'll put it that way, to put it short, that the priesthood of Melchizedek is the inner identity and root of emissaries of divine light, and is the positive core, the activating core of the Third Sacred School. It's another name for who we are. Clearly, the priesthood of Melchizedek hasn't fully manifested on earth. Throughout history, it's been seldom manifested in any full way, at least the history that is conscious to humanity. Even today, it's not fully manifested on earth. We can see that clearly. But the bringing forth and manifestation of that true priesthood, you could say, is the core task of those who awaken and become fully conscious of the divine nature of who they are and their true origin, to bring forth that mechanism on earth that is the guiding mechanism for humanity. My topic today is twofold: true priesthood and climax times. By true priesthood, I mean the embodiment in form on earth of the transcendent heavenly priesthood. However adequately embodied or manifested it is on earth or not. The priesthood of Melchizedek is not merely an invisible heavenly priesthood, but has taken form. And we saw its manifestation emerging under Yolanda and Martin. And we have gone through some good times, some bad times, some climax times in the process of all of that. It's clear that through history, the embodiment was often very small, but it provided, nonetheless, essential stimulation for humanity's forward movement. The second topic I want to touch on is climax times. Isn't this something that increasing numbers of people on Earth sense in the present cycle? A great pressure mounting over time, leading to points of substantial change. We can sense it. You may have heard in the news today that there was possibly another assassination attempt on Trump. But these are just surface tremors of what's moving in the larger cycle. Martin spoke of the pressure of spirit of heaven, of the increasing sounding of the trumpet of spirit at the back of all the outer events and the pressures that build in the outer events. The pressures at the outer level are not merely due to outer factors alone, but principally because of what's moving at the level of spirit and the planetary cycle as a whole. As we enter these topics, the true priesthood and climax times, I want to do so by recounting a vision that came to me when I was in meditation, a vision that contains both these topics, the true priesthood and climax times, in a single vivid image, a single vivid scene. By the way, this meditation and vision didn't come to me last week or last month or even last year, but rather long ago when I was 24 years old during a meditation in a time before I met the emissaries. It was shortly before meeting the emissaries. And it was only much later in attending class that I began to understand the meaning of the vision. The vision came unexpectedly and left an indelible imprint in my heart and mind. It was only in listening to Yolanda about the destruction of the motherland that I could begin to understand the nature of the vision. The vision was of a moment and circumstance that contained the ending of a civilizational epoch. It was a specific scene carrying a poignancy and depth of feeling. Again, this was before hearing Yolanda in the classes, hearing about the motherland, past civilizations that humanity doesn't know about. I had no idea of any of this, but the scene came. Perhaps it's a memory from the personal and our collective past. The scene image was of several rooms seen from above, from the vantage point of the ceiling, you could say. I was looking down upon several rooms. The building itself was perhaps built of stone, like a large mansion or castle. There were people huddled in other rooms, but in the room directly below, there was an older man lying on a stone table, unmoving. This man was clearly a man of great substance and character, a leader. And he had sustained some kind of burn-like injury to his hands. What I got in a flash of, I don't know how an understanding like this comes, but in a flash, I understood that he had been instrumental in holding something in alignment until the final moment, and it could no longer be held. Several things stood out in the vision. And the somber, pregnant sense of, one of them was a somber, pregnant sense of massive loss and a long cycle of reverberating harvest that would follow. It was so palpable that you could cut it with a knife. A sense of civilization having just been lost. The scene wasn't a scene of massive destruction or anything of that sort. It was just a scene of a room and a man lying on a stone table and some people in the other room. The other thing that stood out vividly was the character of this man. His nobility, uprightness, gentle but obvious strength. What I understood years later as I learned of spirit and of Yolanda is that this man was a divine priest, perhaps a priest of the order of Melchizedek of that age, and provided essential expression of true identity and character in that climax cycle. This is one of the leadership provisions of the true priesthood. Provide essential expression of true identity and character in good times, in bad times, and in climax times. the seeds planted thereby by such essential expression of identity and character. You could say are lifelines for humanity and for the future to come that emerges thereafter. Perhaps one more thing that can be said of the three priesthood is that it is the focal expression of the character of God on earth. The focal expression of the character of God. Wisdom, courage, selflessness, dedication. It is, as Yolanda has pointed out, it is because of the lives of countless individuals who expressed such character in its fullness and apex, or in part, that we hear today in, and humanity is in as intact a condition as it is today, and with the opportunities that we have today. I want to touch on a few facets of the true priesthood, and particularly two aspects of the substance of the priesthood. The negative or a negative aspect of the substance of the priesthood and a positive aspect of the substance of the priesthood. In regard to the negative aspect of the substance of the priesthood, Yolanda spoke of the substance of truth as being lust. Lust, passion, divine lust, upward passion as the substance of truth. Perhaps we could say that the substance of the priesthood is the substance of truth, is passion upward, lust upward, lust for the Lord, for the truth. Trembling to obey. Trembling to obey. What is in that trembling? It's passion. Upward passion for the Lord. The running to meet the Lord. And perhaps it is in the priesthood that is represented most strongly and clearly. A trembling to obey, a running in eagerness to meet the Lord and to greet the Lord. And because of this, they are the priesthood. And in this, they represent the best of humanity. That in humanity that longs to run to meet the Lord. That in humanity where passion upward is alive and strong. So it is that the priesthood represents the best of humanity, represent the people to the Lord. And And the priesthood also represents, in its positive aspect, the Lord to the people. From passion upward, lust upward, comes union. And in union with the Lord, the priesthood represents the Lord to the people. Without that passion, there would be no union and no means thus to represent the Lord to the people. The Lord is represented to the people through the provision of the word, the tone, and specifically the invitation to men and women of integrity, to humanity, to rise up to its true nature. This invitation is focalized in the presence and expression of the true priesthood. You could say that the true priesthood focalizes passion, upward divine lust in good times, bad times, and climax times. Incidentally, I want to say a word about attunement and the priesthood. We could say that attunement is a central gift of the priesthood, and that the attunement is born of the priesthood. That attunement is born of upward passion, is born of the upward Shekinah fire in the heart of the priesthood. An upward fire that provides a channel for downward fire. Shekinah fire upward that opens the way for Shekinah fire downward to come into the world. You could say, without that passion, and ultimately without Shekinah, no attunement. There would only be the form of attunement, but the true substance of attunement. Right at the back of that substance, we could say, is divine lust. Love, upward. We all instinctively know this and inherently know this, but I think it's helpful to speak clearly and consciously. The upward passion in an attunement server activates the same in a servee, in the one receiving the attunement. If the passion upward has been weak in that person, the passion in the server activates that same passion in the one receiving the attunement. And it is that that begins to allow the flow, the figure 8 flow from heaven into the earth and up. The servee comes alive. Shekinah cycle complete. I want to say a word about times when the priesthood was weakened a great deal in form or in substance on earth. Recently, there was mention of the time of the judges when every man did what they thought right in their own eyes. And the substance of the priesthood was very weak. The time when Jesus was, the master was left without a hedge. We could see was a moment when the priesthood was weakened, at least in form substantially. But in substance, in essence, the master maintained that vital attunement and the connection and the manifestation focalized on earth of the priesthood was not broken. Another time that we know of is the time of Uranda with horses, that famous story. His hedge was apparently the horses. May that not happen again. Next, I want to say something about climax times, climax cycles. Cycles we know build don't just all stay even indefinitely. They build and often build to certain pressure points. When these are larger, they build to larger climax points. And these pressure points and climax points are points of change. Sometimes it's because we don't take advantage of the pressure points where smaller changes could have been made, that larger climax points come, where all the changes are due at once. We can sense pressure building in the world. Perhaps humanity has missed many pressure points where smaller changes could have been made. We are aware of this, how incalcitrant humanity has been in many ways. Just look at climate change, the warnings, the pressure points. The warnings were given many times and the pressure points regarding them have come and gone. Now we build towards climax points. Moments of climax are moments of choice and of proving. Choosing what? Proving what? Proving this is spiritual expression truly my first choice. And what about that other thing? called results or attachment thereof. Let love radiate without concern for results. Well, we have known this and in substantial ways practiced this. But when there is more at stake, when more results are at stake, will we choose to let love radiate without concern for those larger aspects of what may be at stake? Will we choose spiritual expression then? Spiritual expression versus desired or favored results. One climax time moment that we know in history was when in the life of Abram, the climax moment came when Abram had to choose between what he's understood as spiritual expression versus the one result that he longed to keep the most. His son of old age, Isaac, but not just a personal son, a son that he sensed had a larger purpose and meaning for many more people. Which would he choose? In that climax moment? Had he chosen to not sacrifice Isaac, at least in his understanding and in mind? Had he chosen to not sacrifice Isaac because he couldn't bear that result? What would we know of history? It would have been a different history. What inheritance would he have left to Isaac had he made that choice? He would have been a good father, a truly loving father. But would he have left the inheritance of a true priest after the older order of Melchizedek that would choose spirit first, no matter what the results might be? Abram left to Isaac the expression, the character of a true priest, and thus the cycle that emerged afterwards could emerge. But it emerged, it was focalized in that climax moment. The story of Job that we know was a similar story, where in climax time, hours and days, he chose uprightness, integrity over results. We know the same in the story of the Master. Obviously, in our lives and in the lives of those that constitute the priesthood, we prepare through the small circumstances that come to us and prepare in times of lesser pressure, perhaps through times of smaller crises also. The making of the true choice. I know around me there are various friends and servers facing their own crisis points. What I say to my friends is simple. Choose spiritual expression first. And for some of them that I'm aware, the results that they possibly face are large results that would affect the rest of their lives. But I say to them, choose spiritual expression first, and all else will follow. Among other things, that spiritual expression will be the true inheritance and protection for your child, more than many other things. They'll grow with a parent that is a true priest, a priestess. And that is the inheritance the child will receive. Can there be a greater inheritance than that? Give the child millions. To what end? Give them the inheritance of a priestess or a priest that has loved spiritual expression first, like Abram did. That's the true inheritance. Spirit is supreme. Only spiritual expression has the weight of reality. The circumstances and results will come and go. But what will remain is spirit expressed and imprinted in the substance and heart and memory of humanity. That will remain. In some ways, if there are climax times that come, that are times and hours and days of possible maximum loss at an outer level. And as I say, there are some of my friends who face such situation. The hour, I say to them, the hour of the possible maximum loss, in fact, may be your, our, my finest hour. You remember this was Winston Churchill's speech to the people of England, with the Luftwaffe, Hitler's air force, approaching, with all Europe having fallen, the hour of greatest crisis for England, a climax hour had come, where massive loss was possibility and people quavered and trembled in fear. He said, instead, this is our finest hour. This is when the truth of who we really are, the truth of who we are, may come forth. Did he not speak as an expression of the true priest in that moment? And history was changed because of that spiritual expression. Imagine if he had also been so concerned with results that he didn't know how to offer the expression of spirit of our. Would we have an America, a post-Nazi America, as I think there's an Amazon primetime drama called Man in the High Castle, apparently that is of an America in our times, controlled by Nazi Germany and Japan. But instead, we have a different history. I want to speak about something that I would call coming to zero. Coming to zero. As we, even in our elder and senior years, make ourselves fully available to spiritual expression. We can do something in preparation that might be describable as coming to zero. Often in elder senior years, there's more rigidity that sets in. We kind of all know this a little bit. Rigidity of attitude, habit, behavior. Something that in our passionate younger years would have scoffed at. But if we have some habits, rigidities that have settled in, how about coming to zero? Letting it all go. Many of us who are sharing this time are so much more fluid than the vast numbers of others of similar age in the world. perhaps there's something a little more that is possible in us. Letting it go, letting it all go, coming to the original place of our passionate, eager response, the running to meet the Lord, trembling to obey, and responding to the increasing sound of the trumpet, not with concern, but with thrill, as we sense climax times emerging to run to meet the Lord within the climax time. A deep, complete willingness to change, even now, coming to zero, freeing up spiritually, freeing up materially. I know I'm being a little, what shall I say? It could be a little presumptuous of me to say these things. That perhaps there may be more coming to zero for us to do. If you find it presumptive, please forgive me. But to zero, we must come. We must come. Only as we are in that place of complete fluidity at zero, available to respond swiftly, decisively. May we provide the expression of the identity and character of the Lord in the most decisive moments, the climax moments. That man that I described in the vision, that priest, would he have been able to do what he did, what he seems to have done, had it not come to zero, where nothing external mattered, but the one thing, to offer spiritual expression. I want to be more presumptuous yet, if I haven't been too presumptuous already. So I ask your forgiveness in advance. One of the most stuck patterns of human nature is the earthly pattern of leaving an inheritance. Those of us of older years have all given thought to what we might leave in inheritance to children, to family, etc. This is an old ancient pattern. Have we come to utter clarity of what it means to leave a true inheritance to our children? And Are we following the old pattern of thinking, just merely to do as so many do, just leave the material inheritance to the children? I give thanks to God that Warren Buffett, of all people, is not doing that. He's leaving the vast portion of his wealth to the greater good and not to his children. Have we considered the possibility of freeing that material inheritance in such a way that there is greater freedom, flexibility, and to ask the Lord, how may this inheritance be best used? As I say this, this is not a pitch to give money. It is an invitation to think carefully, deeply, how our substance may best be used as true priests and priestesses. Offering a true inheritance to our children, an inheritance of character and spirit, offering a true inheritance to the Lord. Wow, Eugene is audacious to bring up such a topic. But isn't it truly important to touch a topic as this, where there's the most old grip, rigidity, old pattern of thinking? So I suggest this. Just for thought. Finally, as we come to the close, I want to touch on another coming to zero. And this relates to the question, what does the Lord need the most? In these crucial times? Would it not be a true pattern of agreement not general agreement, long distance agreement, but close, unified agreement. What stands in the way of it? Patterns of experience, memory of one another that brings wariness. Some of it may be understandable. But what about coming to zero? And I include in this among core leaders and individuals in our extended body. How about the possibility of coming to zero? How about the possibility of canceling debts of the heart, canceling debts of hurt, canceling prejudgments, canceling positions, outer and mental? How about coming to zero regarding one another? Putting ourselves together on the altar before the Lord. Coming to zero together. Would this not rejoice the Lord? Coming to zero in such a way that Spirit may have a way totally unexpected. Well, climax points have a way of bringing things to zero. Some of it is forced. Wars, for some, bring things to zero. Other things sometimes bring things to zero. But the priesthood are the ones willing to come to zero without the stimulation of those outer events. Come to zero because of love for the Lord, where all is yielded, all is made possible, fluid. Especially one's opinions are yielded to the Lord. True expression in climax times. Coming to zero, as Abram did, freeing everything so that the unfettered expression of spirit may be possible through us. On this anniversary of this ministry, I'm happy to share this consideration with you. Of the true expression of priests and priestesses after the order of Melchizedek. Those that are willing to come to zero in passionate love for the Lord, to allow what usually is impossible to be possible, and thus allow history that would otherwise be impossible to be made possible. So thank you, friends. It's been a precious time, and together as priests and priestesses, we come to zero for love of our King, for service to humanity, freeing up spiritually, freeing up materially, freeing up mentally, freeing up at every level. We make ourselves, our substance, available for the expression of spirit in these crucial times. Thank you all.